Hello, this is Gary007 and welcome to my channel. I was looking up guides and a lot of the guides were really good online. There's some really good guides, but they got really complex really quickly. There's a reason why guides like that do get quite complex, and that's because the game is a complex game. But sometimes people overcomplicate something. You know, if you go to work, you give someone a task to do and they overcomplicate that task to the point where you're like, just do the damn task. Just do your job. And there's a lot of guides out there like that. Now, that's not to say that there are parts of the game that aren't complicated, but generally speaking, when you're playing the game, essentially anybody can play this game. Anybody can pick this game up and start playing the game and start playing all the storyline, Act 1 to Act 10. So the storyline, when I play it, I actually really enjoy the storyline more than the in-game content. There's something about the progression system and putting points into the skill tree that I really like doing, and sort of seeing your character growing in front of you, and power and all the rest of it. There's something about the skill tree that I like in the beginning stages of your character, as you sort of put points into weapons or spells or totems or minions or anything like that, or critical hit chance, and all that sort of gift gaff and rubbish that comes into an RPG. I actually like that aspect of the game. I really like seeing that growing of power of your character. The end-game content we'll talk about, but from your perspective, when you start playing this game, I'm going to be honest, it's going to be a little bit rough for you if you haven't followed a guide and you decided to go with XY skill for whatever reason it is. Don't be disheartened by it, because it doesn't actually take that long to level up another character. And you'll learn a lot from your very first character. There's a lot of positives you can get out of it if you make a character that's not quite working out for you. You'll start looking things up, trying to figure out why this didn't work for you, why your character sucked, and you'll hear it throughout the community. Your first character was always going to suck. I didn't think that would happen to me. I thought I was above everybody else, and I know I should know what I'm doing. I should be able to figure it out, and I was wrong. I got to Act 10, Kavana, I think it is, whatever his name is, the end boss. I got to him. I died 40 times. 40 times I got killed. I got wiped off. I couldn't even. I struggled so hard to finish that last boss, and I wasn't aware of the in-game mapping system anyway. I was just coming into it fresh. But the signs were there when I built the character, and you might notice the signs too. The game itself, the story is actually, don't mind the story, and it's really good storyline, and I actually like the act structure. It's really good, but where your weaknesses are, the game doesn't really show you that with your first playthrough. Where it does show up predominantly is when you're fighting bosses in the game. So you'll come across bosses in the game, and they're going to show your weaknesses, and if you're starting to die to a few of them, your character's in a bit of trouble, because it's going to struggle on the last boss, and that last boss is like the sort of like the benchmark of where you should be when you start mapping. If you're able to knock off that last boss quite comfortably, then your character's set up really well to go into the end game, which is the mapping system. Because the time you get to the mapping system, the end game system where you start running maps, it's like the Greater Rift system, slightly different with Diablo. Your character's going to progress a lot better if you're able to take that end boss on. It's like a check mark in the game. I believe it is, and I often find that when I do my own builds, because I don't look up build guides much, I sort of look up what goes well with a certain skill gem, what sort of enhances that particular skill. And then I go off and I go into the skill tree and make my own way. I sort of know by now what works, what doesn't work, what I sort of need at certain benchmarks. Like in the game, in this particular game, resistances matter. So the cap's about 75% resistances. But by the time you get to Act 10, and when you kill that last boss, I think it's negative 30. So it goes negative 30 twice, so it's like negative 60% resistances. If you didn't have any resistances on, you killed the last boss, you'd be in negative 60% resistances. So you need to stack enough resistances to get back up to 75% in order to run maps, in order to reflect or dampen the damage that you're going to take on from various mobs and stuff like that. So resistances matter, and being overcapped by the time you get to that last boss in the game at Act 10 by 30%, you're gonna be able to take that first hit, and you're not gonna need to re-gear again. So, and worry about all the rest of that. You can go straight into mapping and start accumulating currency. The other thing in this game is mobility is key. You need to be able to get around the map quite quickly. So 30% speed run on your boots is essential for maneuverability, because there's a lot of stuff that gets thrown at you with bosses and mobs and that. You want to be able to sort of move around relatively quickly, and it's sort of a really underrated stat in the game, movement speed. I found movement speed makes a huge difference in the game, and also speeds up your gameplay quite a bit. Don't worry when you see people online and you're watching replays from experienced players and they're smashing everything. There's stuff flying all over the screen and they've got a billion buffs on them. Don't worry about any of that when you play your character. It's not something you need to worry about. You just need to worry that their characters and builds are set up in a different way. So if you're playing a Cyclone build, like I've just got a demo here of me leveling my Cyclone build up, I don't have a lot of buffs going, so don't concern yourself, because different builds work slightly different. Say take the Witch will probably work better with a larger mana pool, because there is talents on the tree that will take 30% mana damage before health. So you take a bit of damage, you soak it up through mana instead of health. So don't concern yourself about what the latest builds are. You'll see a lot of gimmicky builds, because every league that comes and goes, there's something broken. There's always something broken, and people are just going to abuse that mechanic until the cows come home. You can follow the trends if you like, but my advice is I wouldn't bother, really. I mean, at the end of the day, try to challenge yourself a little bit in this game. I've followed silly trends. I followed a ranger once with ballistas. I can't remember, it was like 9 ballistas I could summon. Anyway, it got really silly, but I had no defense. I mean, it was really cool at map clearing, but when it came to a boss, it was absolutely hopeless. I got one-shotted. So, just be careful about what you see and what people play online, and that's not to say there's some awesome builds out there. I'm just saying that don't try and compare their builds to yours at any point, because sometimes they rely on different uniques to make those builds work. Which brings me to another point that I'd like to sort of point out in the game. Don't waste your money crafting a lot of gear. Don't use Chaos Orbs. The only time you should be using Chaos Orbs is to buy stuff on Path of Exile trade website, so you can actually go and buy gear. It's actually easier. You can probably deck out your character in the game with probably 10 chaos, and you've pretty much got a decked out geared character that could probably do well in mapping and doing in-game content. You don't need a lot of currency to get away with builds. You often see a lot of YouTube videos out there that are promoting how to make tons of currency, but at the end of the day, you only need enough for your build in order to operate correctly. It's fine making currency if you want to, if that's your venture in life and Path of Exile, but it's not something you need. You don't actually need a lot of chaos orbs to actually get your build up and going properly. But I would stay away from crafting. Crafting is weird in Path of Exile. It's so RNG, which brings me on to the next stage, and that's mapping. And mapping is a funny thing in this game. So you can pretty much augmentate all of your maps, everything, flasks, your gear. You can even do it with gems. You can val them. With mapping in the game, these things that drop now maps, and these maps you can augmentate to have different pack sizes and penalties and better loot and all the rest of it. If you're an average player like myself, don't expect to be doing bosses, end-game bosses in this game. They take a lot of commitment with the game, so that's where the grinding gears games comes into it. The grinding part of it is actually the maps, and the maps themselves are very RNG and how they drop. So don't expect to be doing in-game bosses, especially if this is your first time doing it, or ever. If you don't have hours and hours to commit to a game like Path of Exile to do in-game bosses, then you're not going to be doing them. And I don't think I've ever done an in-game boss, to be honest. I have not done one, and I'm your average player, so I'm just speaking to you out there, to me. I mean, you can make a really awesome build, but without time investment, you're just not going to do it. That's why rifts are probably really good when it comes to Diablo 3. It's on an even playing field. Rifting, you're really just challenging yourself and your builds. With Path of Exile, you could have the most OP build out there, but if you can't get your maps to drop, or you're not buying them, or you don't have enough currency to buy the maps that you need, you're just not going to do the bosses, and it's just gated behind that particular system. I'm not a huge fan of mapping. I think, though, it's not a bad system. Not everybody has the right to do in-game content, but if you got the equipment and gear to do so, then I reckon you should be able to have a shot at it. But that's just my take on in-game. There is other different in-games that you can get into, like delving. That's another in-game mechanic. I like delving, actually, because that's not it's a little bit gated when trying to get sulfite, but you're probably lost in what I'm saying. But anyway, that's sort of my take on the game. It's not gonna reveal too much about the game itself. It's just my experience within Path of Exile. I've never played a lot of RPG games, but since I've downloaded and played this game a year or so ago, I've always come back to it. I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed the combat. I've always enjoyed experimenting, and that's the real cool thing about it. It does give you a lot of freedom to experiment with builds and stuff like that. And you look online to see, what does this flask do? What's it called? Why am I not doing this? Or, so there's a lot of things in the game that's going to provide you with a lot of entertainment, I reckon. So yeah, give it a shot. I hope you enjoyed this sort of bit of a casual, laid-back conversation, really. And yeah, all right. Thanks for listening and watching my channel. And yeah, see ya. Bye.